everyone, David and Gino here, taking a look at the Galway Stakes, the final stakes to be run on Saturday at Saratoga. This one going the 5.5 furlong distance on the Mellon turf course for 3-year-old fillies. And Gino, we're going to have a prohibitive favorite in this race in the number 5 Star of Mystery, who so far has run competitively against a grade 1 quality older males as a 3-year-old filly, beat 3-year-old males last time, and now for the first time in the U.S., she'll finally be running against her own age group and gender 3-year-old fillies. And I think it just makes her really tough to beat in this Galway.
Yeah, she towers over the field on class and on resume based on what she's done. But you and I have handicapped a couple of these races for Saturday. And what's very key when you're playing these races, you want to look at the weather, because the turf course could be the equalizer, David. If it's not playing as a fast, firm turf course where it's just very easy, if there's give in the ground, if it's soft, if it's just not the type of turf course that some of these horses like, I think that's how you can find some prices or maybe find some intriguing horses.
And I think that is a conversation that we should have around Star of Mystery. We can dive into a little more when we get to her as one of the contenders in this race. But first, let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this Galway. And there is supposed to be some speed in here to set up the late runs of Star of Mystery and potentially some others in this field, because Ever So Sweet, El Terreno, and Baraye, they all do their best running when they're forwardly placed. And even if the number 1 Golden Degree ends up running in this race on the turf, she's speed as well. So it does feel like there's supposed to be an honest pace up front in this stakes.
There's versions of this race where they're flying early. That also sets up for the horse Star of Mystery, who's the heavy favorite on paper. So just on paper, she does look very, very good coming back into a softer spot after beating Classier.
Let's go through this field in post-position order, beginning with the number 1 Golden Degree. And Gino, I'm not really sure if this horse is actually intended for the turf. I wonder if she's sort of a faux MTO in this race for Linda Rice, hoping to draw a nice inside post position if this race ends up coming off the turf, because Golden Degree really has nothing but dirt form, and she's definitely improved recently for Linda, but on dirt or the turf, she hasn't really run up to the level of the quality of the favorites in this race.
Yeah, that's the feel when you look at her. She's 2 for 2 for Rice, but those have come versus much softer on the dirt, going longer. She does have a sib that won long on the turf, but I just think she's in here hoping this race comes off the grass.
The number 2, Gravette, is going to be another long shot in this race. She's a horse who has actually never won a race on the turf, but she was stakes placed going the 6 furlongs at the end of her 2-year-old season in the Stewart Manor, and I thought she ran an underrated race that day because the pace sort of fell apart at the end, and she held on for third at a big price, 52-1. Hasn't exactly gotten back to that form so far during her 3-year-old campaign, but I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to get her a little bit more off the pace this time with so much speed drawn to her outside, and I think you could find worse horses to take a shot with underneath at a price.
Yeah, bottom of exotics, because she probably has a little bit of fitness too, cutting back from 6.5 to this 5.5. So she may be able to stay a little bit. But her 2 stakes wins have come on the synthetic against Pennsylvania breds. And when you're just comparing the class of what she's faced to like the class of what Star of Mystery's faced, to me, it's just different worlds. So the most I could get with her would be like bottom of exotics.
Number 3 is Pipsy, and we'll take a look at her stateside debut when she was the winner of the Grade 3 Soaring Softly at Aqueduct. And we're only going to show the stretch run, not the start of this race, but the start is important to talk about, because this horse was off very slowly, kind of hopped up at the beginning and was off behind the field, had a lot of ground to make up from that point. And once she steers out into the clear under Flavien Prat, she just mows this field down to the stretch, beating one of today's rivals, Carew, who's also back in here. Pipsy did try to stretch out in her next start at Churchill Downs, going the mile, and I think proved that that's just not the trip that she wants, the 2 turns, especially when she's forwardly placed without cover. Just not the kind of trip that's going to work for her. She's much more of a sprinting type, and I don't think she has to be nearly as far back in the early stages as she was in the Soaring Softly, because at least she broke better last time in the Tep and at Churchill, even though she didn't run as well. I like her cutting back, and I think she's the kind of horse that is going to handle some cut in the ground.
Yeah, I think she's probably a little better than the speed figure too, if you're just comparing her to like Star of Mystery and some of the other top horses in this field. And when you look at her races before the Soaring Softly, she had actually been more of a speed horse too. I don't think that would necessarily translate to her being on the lead in sprint races over here compared to how she was overseas, but she was much more of a horse that showed tactical speed. So I think coming from way out of it was more of missing the break. Like you said, she was last of 10 early on in that field. And instead of getting, panicky or trying to rush up, they were very patient, and they showed that she can adapt to different circumstances. I think she's just a really nice horse who didn't want any part of going long last time out.
Yeah, she has a horse the connections had high hopes for. They paid nearly $1 million for her at auction at the end of last season. So we'll see if that purchase price starts to pan out with Pipsy. The number 4 is Ever So Sweet. She actually went off as the favorite in the Coronation Cup once Star of Mystery scratched out of that race in favor of the Quick Call later that weekend against the boys. And I think Ever So Sweet was just kind of disappointing that day. I mean, she showed speed. They were really moving up front, but she just had no answer once they challenged her at the top of the stretch. And she just kind of feels like the sort of horse that can boss around weaker fields and look impressive. But when she gets a challenge, I wonder if she can stand up to it.
Yeah, I was expecting a lot more from her because it says she stumbled at the break. She stumbled a little bit just after the start, but it didn't really take a lot out of her. She was still able to get up to battle and she cleared off, just had nothing late. I do think she's a little bit better than that, though. So I will use her in the underneath spots, but she's going to have to be better because there is other pace in here. So she may have a tougher trip than she had in her last start. I'm just expecting more from her in here. I don't know if it's enough to beat Star of Mystery, but I think she'll run better than she did last time out.
And up next is that heavy favorite, the number 5 Star of Mystery. We'll take a look at her recent victory in the Quick Call over the 3-year-old males. And she was really impressive this day. Another fast time, a fast speed figure. I think the 106 buyer, Gino, maybe looks a little high for some of the horses that finished in behind her that day, and I wonder if she's going to get bet a little too heavily based on that number. But you look at her race 2 back in the Jaipur, where, I mean, she was no match for Cogburn, but she was right there with some of the best older sprinters in the country, horses like Arzak and some of the horses that we talked about in our stakes preview for the Troy. So Star of Mystery, she is a standout on class. She's never really run over a turf course that has significant give to it, though. Even over in Europe and in Dubai, she ran over courses that were rated good to firm. And I wonder about the condition for her with a lot of rain expected for Saturday. But make no mistake about it, she is way the horse to beat in this Galway.
And I think you and I previewed that race last time, and I actually liked Mansa Musa, who was the runner-up that day. And David, he got the exact trip I would have hoped for. He got the jump on Star of Mystery. She was a few lengths behind him, and when he hit the top of the stretch, he had every opportunity, and then she just inhaled him really quickly. And that horse is probably better than most of this field if they were to just be running against each other. So maybe it's because I tried to beat her last time, and she has now beat the boys in, or faced the boys in her last 6, and now comes to face fillies and gets in a softer spot here. So I just have a tough time getting around her, especially with the way the race shapes up with a lot of this early projected speed.
The number 6 is El Torino. We'll take a look at her most recent start at Monmouth when she won the Blue Sparkler Stakes, going the same 5.5 furlong distance, but doing so against a weaker field that she's going to meet at Saratoga on Saturday. She is the kind of horse that seems to do her best work when she can clear off to the lead and get comfortable up front. I'm not sure she's going to have the opportunity to do that, drawn in between horses like Ever So Sweet and Baraye. So I'm just not convinced that she's going to be able to achieve this success with a different kind of trip on Saturday.
Yeah, I agree. The tactics for her don't look like they're favorable for this particular race, and she will have to just step up and run a faster race than she's ever run. So I think she's a little up against it in here.
Baraye, another potential speed in this race, going out for Wesley Ward. Her form's a little tough to read. I mean, they've run her on synthetic, they've run her on turf, they've run her on dirt. I'm sure they wouldn't mind if this race gets rained off the grass, given her prowess that she showed on the dirt last time, a sloppy track at Churchill Downs. I think her turf race 2 back is the one you point to as maybe the evidence that she can run as well on the grass. I still think she's going to have to do a lot better than that to upset a horse like Star of Mystery, and I just wonder about the kind of trip that she has coming to her as a horse that wants to be forwardly placed as well.
Yeah, I don't know if is she like the fastest in here. Can she win the battle and just kind of fall into a nice trip like she did a couple starts back at Keeneland? I just kind of have some mixed feelings on her and how, again, the race shapes up. We're talking about 4 or 5 horses whose best races are when they're right on the lead. And if all of those horses, or at least a couple of them, are handled that way and are put forward, I just think that she's going to have a tough time in here. So I'm not sure if this race sets up all that well for Baraye either.
The number 8, Carriou, has been in pretty good form for the Cherie DeVoe barn. She wasn't quite as good as Pipsy 2 back in the Soaring Softly, considering the start of that rival, but she was firing on well at the end of that race after herself encountering a little bit of mid-stretch traffic before finding a seam that day. And last time I thought she ran well in the Coronation Cup behind Twirling Queen, who has just been on a tear, a winning streak for trainer Jose D'Angelo. So Carriou is coming into this race in good form, and I think she's one that you can rely on to pick up some pieces in this race. I don't know if, given the level of competition, if she's going to be good enough to win.
Yeah, I don't know if she's as good as Star of Mystery, but I do think this race shapes up really well for her. And as you were pointing out, if you're using Pipsy as like a measuring stick for this race, as a class horse that you think will fit well in here, I thought Carrie You ran really well behind Pipsy on May the 12th. She didn't have the best of starts either. She moved up to 6th. She was inside behind horses, as you pointed out, a little bit of traffic. She didn't have anywhere to go, and then she tried to angle around. And while she kind of lost some of her momentum, Pipsy was able to build that momentum up and get more of a smooth journey. So I think as a price horse, as a definite underneath horse, and looking at the way the turf course may play, she's a bit intriguing to me in here. And she's a horse who I'm going to try to get her in the mix to get some value out of this race.
The number 9, Amidst Waves, was a really good 2-year-old. She won several stakes on the turf, sprinting. Just not sure she's really moved forward during her 3-year-old season. She's never really taken that speed figure jump up. And she was beaten by some of these rivals, too, back in the Soaring Softly. Didn't think she had a huge excuse last time in the Stormy Blues against weaker competition. So she's just got her work cut out for her in this race.
Yeah, she was behind Pipsy and Carrie You, who I think both of us think just have better chances in here than her. They just seem like they're moving forward and rapidly improving at a higher rate than in Miss Waves. And that's just something we see with a lot of horses like this who are very precocious, good early on when they're a little ahead of schedule. And then once everyone starts to catch up to them, we just haven't seen her take that next step forward and progress.
Let's throw up our picks for this Galway Stakes. And Gino, I have no problem with your top pick of Star of Mystery. She is very much the horse to beat. No argument for me that she is the most likely winner of this race. That's not really even close, but given the connections and those huge speed figures that are jumping off the page, she is going to be an extremely short price in this race. So in those situations, I always want to take a look at somebody else, and I can make a little bit of a case for the number 3, Pipsy, potentially moving up on some wetter turf courses, and a horse who did, I think, run better than it looks in her U.S. debut, but she's going to need the favorite to take a step backwards.
Yeah, and what's nice about the way this race is slated, race number 12 on Saturday, by then we'll have known, obviously, if this race is on the grass or not, but we'll have gotten a look at a few of these races on the grass too to see what the turf looks like. So at that point, if this is race number 12 and it does look like a turf course that was not playing very firm at all, then you're trying to take a shot against Star of Mystery in that spot. And then you're looking at some of the horses who we have used underneath, like the 3 who you have right on top, who I think is very, very logical. Pipsy and Carrie You, both are horses who I think have a little versatility to them too, might be able to sit and pass horses in here in a race that just could be going very fast up front early. So could be some really short price favorites in these turf sprints on Saturday, David.
The number 5, Star of Mystery for Gino, and the number 3, Pipsy on top for me in the Galway Stakes Saturday at Saratoga. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.